Hello, my name is Sky with Smart Poker Study. Now, one of my podcast listeners sent me a hand, and in the hand he had pocket kings, and he ISO raised over a few limpers and got called by a very surprising hand. Now, he wants to know if that preflop call by the villain was actually a good call or not. So in order to do so, we're going to review the hand right here. We're going to whip out Flopzilla, look at some equities, and then we're going to look at some break-even calling math to gauge whether or not villain made a profitable call. Alrighty, so my listener sent me the hand via email, so he just had it, had the details typed out. I decided to use share my pair in order to build the hand to have a nice replayer here. Now, I'm not 100% familiar with share my pair, so I did screw up, and I left 4 players out of the hand because Hero told me that this hand is a full ring tournament where everybody, was in the hand at the time right here. So this pot size, or the antes, should be a little bit more because we have 9 players as opposed to just 5. But it's okay, we're going to go ahead and play out the hand because all the action in the hand is correct to what happened, the board cards and everything. So here we go. Hero is dealt in the big blind, pocket kings. We've got a limper under the gun. Villain decides to call. Limp, another limp. Okay, so let me pause it right there. So we've got 4 limpers ahead of the big blind, who already has 1 big blind in the pot. He decides to make it 12,000 or 8 big blinds total. And this is a great bet. I love it. Hopefully you get just 1 player to call with an inferior hand, or if everybody folds, great. You picked up a really nice pot right here with 1 simple raise pre-flop, right? So 12,000, let's see what happens. The first limper folds. The villain decides to call. Second limper. And then third limper, then the fourth limper. They all fold right here. Now, here's the thing. Hero wanted to know if villain made a good call pre-flop. Now, without doing any math or anything, just looking at this hand, you tell me, is limping and then calling a big raise with queen 5 offsuit, is that a winning play? Nope. I agree with you 100%. This is not a winning play. It can win in the short term. Totally, you can hit anything on a flop, but just as a general rule, limping with queen 5 offsuit, potentially going to the flop at this time 1, 2, then 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 ways to, or 6, yeah, these 2 had folded. So 7 ways to the flop with queen 5 offsuit, you're putting yourself in a potentially losing situation right here. So not a good limp, and then not a good limp, and then call like he does. And then the fold, the flop comes down, queen, queen 5, things look good for Hero, and I agree with the half pot bet, but you get called, of course, because villain has trips. Go all in on that ace because you figure villain's folding most of their aces on the flop, which is probably accurate right there. You think you're ahead, maybe villain has pocket 10s, 9s, 8s, or 5, something really small. And then you lose to the queen, to the trip queens, which is such a bummer. But well played Hero pre-flop and then on the flop. I'm totally down with those plays there. Now, let's take a look at this in Flopzilla here to see some equities. Now, we have villain has the queen 5 offsuit here. From villain's perspective, villain limped in. It goes limp, limp, and then you see the big blind make it 8 big blinds now. Hero told me via email that he's a 51-year-old player. So often, from my perspective as villain, if I'm looking at Hero over there, he's 51 years old, I'm going to guess he's probably playing on the tighter side. So to make it 8 big blinds against 4 other players, I'm probably going to put him on a range like this right here, right? Pretty darn tight range. It's a range that says, hey, I want value out of my hands, or I have such a good hand, but I want to limit the field right now. That's what this range tells me. It's ace queen offsuit as well. It's possible some other hands could be thrown in there. I didn't ask Hero what hands he would make this raise with, but from villain's perspective, this is what I see. Now, queen 5 offsuit versus this tight range only has 24.3% equity. Not a good call, guaranteed. Before we even do math, you need to win 25% of the time. And there's still action. There's still flop, turn, and river to get through. With a queen and a 5, how are you going to do that versus such a tight range? I mean, most likely, a lot of these hands right here are going to be double barreling, triple barreling on you. Are you really going to go to showdown with a pair of 5s or even with a weak pair of queens? You might be doing it because you limp and then called in the first place, Mr. Villain. But man, it's a terrible situation to put yourself in. Queen 5 offsuit, 24.3% equity. Now, what I did was I built out the hand in Excel right here so we could take a look at some math. 9 players, they all put in the 150 ante, which gives us 1350 added to the pot. Lovely right there. Now, 4 limpers, the small blind ended up limping as well. With the big blind chips, with all those forced money and the limpers, we have a total pot before the raise of 8,850 chips. Now, the big blind, or the hero, made it to 12,000. Minus the 1,500, 10,500 chips, which means a total pot after the raise of 19,350. Villain had to call 10,500. Now the flop pot after the call, this is the pot, the size of the pot that they will see on the flop is 29,850, which is a pretty darn good size. Villain's 10,500 is trying to win that total pot of almost 30,000. The break-even equity needed, you just need to take this number, the size of the call, divided by the total pot. And that right there is 35%. Villain needs 35% equity. But as we know, as we already saw with Flopzilla, Queen 5 offsuit only has 24.3% equity. Things are just looking terrible. I really think this was a bad call, that bad limp and then call made by Villain, right? Now, you could say Villain is trying to take advantage of their position post-flop. Hero looks nitty. As soon as they check, I'm going to bet on that flop and take the pot down. Sure, that's possible, but highly unlikely. See, this person limped in with Queen 5 offsuit and then called a raise with Queen 5 offsuit. I don't think they're thinking ahead. I think this villain only wants to make the, or wants to call to see the flop, hit something big, and then get value. This villain is playing bingo poker for sure. So, Hero, you didn't do anything wrong in this play, in this hand. This was a great, well-played hand. I love the extra value, we could say theoretical value, that you got out of this villain. One last thing we want to look at here is your exact range, or your exact equity. You had pocket kings versus that Queen 5. You actually had 87.5% equity. Given just every random flop, you're winning this pot right now 87.5% of the time. Things were looking really good for you. You just got up against a guy who called with a terrible hand and got mega lucky. So be it, it happens. But well, thank you very much for watching, everybody. If you have a hand that you'd like reviewed by me, just send it on in. sky@smartpokerstudy.com. I will either email you back with an answer or create a video just like this where we detail the important actions in the hand. All right, thanks again, and I'll catch you on the flip side.